Hello, everyone. Suzanne Kellner-Zinck, Dawn Visions Hypnosis. Not exactly sure why this lighting is so bad, but it is what it is. The most important thing is the content that you're going to receive. So here we go. Why is it so hard for anorexic and bulimic patients to let go of their self-harming behaviors? After all, one would believe that they would want to not be harming themselves. However, what we need to truly understand is that there's a purpose for why they do what they do. And it may not make sense to those of us who have never had an eating disorder, but it makes perfect sense to those who do have eating disorders. The main reason is because it calms them down. These patients have brains that are constantly bothering them with these compulsive thoughts about how bad they are, how they're not worthy of love or anything else, and what they need to do in order to control what goes into their mouths. With anorexia, it's really more about restricting the food that they're eating to the point where they become malnourished in too many cases. And these anorexics develop these self-harming behaviors because of the way that they were raised. I don't care what any politically correct mental health provider is telling you. I've worked with many of these patients over the years, and they all had the same situations going on. It was family dynamics that caused the problems, period. So we can pretend that's not a fact of life, but it is a fact of life as far as I'm concerned. And I am here to tell you the facts of life, not to placate you with a bunch of bullshit. That's not my style, as anyone who knows me or has gotten to know me through my videos understands. So they really develop these eating disorders because it is a way for them to not deal with the negative thoughts that go through their heads about who they are based on what they interpreted from the households from where they grew up. It's just one way that people have to not deal with their problems. Alcoholics use alcohol so they don't have to listen to their negative thoughts either. Pretty much any addicted person will use any kind of addiction, and these are addictions because the definition of an addiction is running the dopamine so much and so often that the receptors stop working, which is why more and more of the behavior, the dysfunctional behavior, occurs. So what we need to also understand is that when a person becomes a diagnosable addict, their emotional development stops at that point in life. And that's why a lot of these folks act very young indeed, like teenagers, even though they may look like adults and chronologically be adults, which causes even more problems for them when they're trying to make it in the world. They don't fit in. They know they don't fit in. They don't want to grow up. They don't want the responsibilities of being grown up. They don't want anything to do with any of it. So they develop these problems instead. And it is their entire identity. That's right. Being an anorexic or bulimic is their entire identity. So what happens if someone chooses to stop being an anorexic or bulimic? That's right. They don't have an identity. And what happens when we don't have an identity? Well, that's pretty scary. And that is why it's so hard for them to let go of all of these self-harming behaviors, because they don't know who they are without them. And it's scary. It is the scariest thing for them to think about, quite honestly. So for them to go to the regular conventional treatment programs, and be told that they have to do whatever they're told to do, well, first of all, it's like being in prison. So who wants to be in a prison, especially when you have really deep emotional problems and you're having a hard enough time growing up as it is? And secondly, they're not listened to. The providers in these programs do not listen to their patients. They demand things of them more often than not. And yeah, they might have some group sessions, they might have individual therapy, whatever. But from what my clients tell me, it's pretty useless because I don't hear anything they say. It's like they're totally discounted. And I can tell you honestly that in my past, when I was dealing with manic depression, that's what it was known back in the years when I was diagnosed, back in the late 1980s, I wasn't listened to either. I had to drag my then husband in to see my psychiatrist with me to tell her out of his mouth what she would not listen to coming from me. I was not capable of doing anything. I was so over-medicated. My body was so depressed. I had no energy for anything. I couldn't think. It was horrific. And guess what? She heard it coming from him. Wouldn't hear from me until the next month. But I put it in his mouth anyway, saying that he said that I still could go down some more. And then she did drop the medication down again. So you can imagine me, an adult, understanding what's going on in my life, totally competent to talk about what's going on with my medications, not being listened to. College graduate and everything, not being listened to. So why would they do what they're supposed to do in these treatment programs? Why would they go through all the treatment program? Well, most of them don't for these very reasons. It's not fun being discounted and treated like a nobody when supposedly you're there to be helped by these competent and hopefully heart-centered people. But it's a bunch of overpriced, demeaning, discounting process that these poor patients go through. The bulimics are a bit stronger and they're more able to speak their truth. But again, who wants to be treated like a piece of crap when you're supposed to be getting help? So it doesn't work. And the bulimics, they have their own issues of looking for love in the wrong places. Most of my clients were either dating men that were much older than them, looking for love in the wrong places, looking for substitutes for absence or abusive fathers, or they were androgynous, not wanting to deal with their female sexuality at all. So these aspects of their conditions need to be dealt with as well. So there's a lot of complexities involved when we're talking about these particular eating disorders because there's layers and layers and layers of things that need to be understood and be released. But all the treatment programs seem to care about is what they are or not eating, that they follow the rules and do as they're told. And no one's going to heal under those circumstances. And even when they work with me, I have to tell them. I understand that they loathe themselves, as in hate themselves. They've learned that. And I also tell them the good news is that they can unlearn it because they certainly didn't come out of their mother's vagina hating themselves. And if they're willing to unlearn that and learn how to love and respect themselves, then they can get to the point where they're going to love and respect themselves enough to actually do whatever it takes to treat their body as the temple it is, giving it what it needs in order to function appropriately, meaning nutrition, appropriate amounts of exercise, and being able to develop loving, healthy relationships with others on top of whatever their other goals are for hobbies and work that's meaningful to them. You know, those things that make life worth living. These are the things that matter. And thank God, Flea, when I'm working in the hypnotic mind, I'm bypassing all of their conscious beta brainwave thinking processes. which these treatment programs don't know how to do because they don't integrate hypnotism or neurolinguistic programming into their programs. No, they use the 12-step programs, which just teach them how to be eating disordered for the rest of their lives because, once you're an addict, you're always an addict. I'll tell you right here, right now, that's a bunch of bullshit too, because how could I possibly have had clients for over 20 years who never look back after they go through the treatment with me? So obviously that's a falsehood and we need to dump it. This is a technology treatment that goes back to, I believe, the 1930s or 40s. Totally outdated. So I'm able to go into their amygdala, where the emotions reside. I'm able to go into their hippocampus, where their imperfect memories are. Because the younger you are, the worse your memories are going to be remembered. Because as kids, we can't reason, rationalize, or judge anything. We certainly have a very difficult time putting ourselves into another person's place. That begins around the age of, 6, 7, 8 years old. It just starts at that point. But it's still very difficult for kids to understand another person's perspective until much later on when their prefrontal cortex develops a lot more. So that's another situation as well. We need to treat our patients based on the emotional and cognitive developmental levels they are at, period. And we need to respect that as we're working with them, talking on their level, not down to them, just on their level, and being respectful of their feelings and integrating what it is they say will help them as we're doing the work with them. Because if it was you or I, that's what we would want, right? So why would you think any different of these patients, especially these patients? So here are some of the reasons that we need to really move on with how we go about providing treatment for anorexics and bulimics, as to respect where they are cognitively as well as emotionally. Let's listen to what they have to say about what will help them. How about taking in their dietary desires? Food, they have foods that they like. And if they have chosen not to like any foods, well, through hypnosis, I can get them to actually get in touch with the foods they used to like before they developed their eating disorder and bring them back to actually enjoying them again and eating them again. I actually created a video that's on this channel that brings anorexics and bulimics through this very process of hypnosis. So they will be able to eat healthfully so their bodies will function the way bodies need to function to be healthy. And we also can help them get in touch with the things that they enjoy doing if they don't remember, because they were so young when all of these eating disorders developed. We can help them figure out what they would like to do in their lives, again, in a hypnotic trance state. There are so many ways that we can use hypnosis to help these folks, because the other thing that we need to understand is that they're in the hypnotic state while they're doing their self-harming behaviors anyway. They are well practiced at hypnosis, so why not use the same modality, hypnosis, to help them heal? It is a win-win-win. Win for the patient, win for the people who love and care about them, and certainly a win for whoever is doing the treatment for these folks to finally heal and move on with their lives, never having to have these symptoms ever again, because that's what my clients have been able to do. I put my calendar down in the description for anyone who is wanting to get help along with the cost to get rid of these problems. It's all done online, one-on-one, individually, because doing this work with a bunch of eating disorder people all together in one place is the best way for them to fail, because they know that they just compete with one another in terms of how quickly they can drop even more weight. Worst thing for them ever. And for those of you who are practitioners specializing in anorexia and bulimia, who are sick of seeing your patients fail over and over and over again, are open to having them heal and move on with life, there's a calendar there for you also to schedule time to talk to me about my 3-day VIP online hypnosis, and NLP training with a 12-month mentorship included, so you can learn how to do these techniques correctly, along with how to take a really good detailed personal history from which you can develop a healing treatment plan, one that I've created for my own clients over the years, and how to do all these techniques correctly, because you need someone who's well practiced and knows how to do these things in the right order and correctly to get the same life-giving results that I've gotten from my patients, which is what I would love you to be able to do, because we don't need to lose any more of these creative, wonderful young people any longer. It's time for us to rise up and do what we know how to do to help these kids heal and move on with life. As always, I thank you for spending your time with me. Till next time. Bye-bye.